She died last Thursday when I hesitated, when I pulled back for one heartbeat when she needed me. I let her fall into the hollow. She was my wife, my love. I know that now. I teach at a university. I'm 43. I'm supposed to be the kind of man who can explain himself. Right now, I can barely close my eyes without thinking of her, seeing images of her. I deserve this. I know I do. I can dress it up however I want, but in the end, I'm just an idiot asshole who had excuses. I was living between two women, my wife, Sila, and Hale. I love them both. That's why it doesn't settle, why it keeps pressing in on me from the inside. Sila was my wife for 11 years. She worked in research at a drug company I won't name, out past the city, big salary, perfect setup. One of those gray glass places with gates and badges and people who never really say what they do. She was senior there, the kind of smart that made other smart people straighten up when she walked in. But she wasn't distant from the research itself. She went deep into it, into the compounds, the trials, the smallest details. She needed to see things herself, not through reports or through other people. I used to love that about her. She was beautiful too, not just to me. Tall and slight, dark hair, pale skin, black eyes that lingered on you in a way that stirred something low and hard to ignore. The kind of face that made people turn without realizing it. Even when she was tired, even when she was angry, she had that kind of beauty. The problem was that living with her felt like living next to a wire that was always live. At first, it was kind of cute, even exciting, but over the years that faded. She noticed everything. If I came home 3 minutes late, if I showered before dinner on the wrong day, if my shirt smelled like coffee from a place I didn't usually go. Over time, I began to feel like I was suffocating in it, like the air was slowly being pulled out of our lives. It felt cold. It felt lonely. She never yelled. Sometimes I wished she had. It would have been easier to fight something loud. Instead, she would just look at me for 1 second too long, or ask one small question in that calm, even voice, and I'd feel my stomach drop. Ice bitch. I used to call her when we fought and I lost it, when I wanted to hurt her back for the way I felt trapped with her, even though staying was my choice. It always made her livid, but not in a loud way. It was something colder than anger, like an inner kind of crying that never made it to the surface. Once, during one of our usual fights, she looked at me and said quietly, "You're the one with the crack in your heart." Behind it, there's just emptiness, an endless, swallowing hole no woman is ever going to fill. After a while, we'd patch things up, say just enough to keep going, and slip right back into the same cold distance that our marriage had become. At least we didn't have kids to drag through it. Her mother killed herself after Sila's father had an affair. She told me that before we got married. We were sitting in her car outside my place, engine off, the windows fogged, the quiet ticking of it cooling down. The street was empty. She had both hands folded in her lap, looking straight ahead, not at me. She didn't cry, of course. "Some people don't survive betrayal," she said. Then she looked at me and added, "And they kill families." I never forgot that, but I loved her. I need that said. I loved the smell of her hair when she came to bed late. I loved the rare way she smiled, like it had to fight through stone to get out. I loved how, on good mornings, she'd tuck her cold feet under my leg and steal my heat without asking. I loved the softness of her body, the way her skin gave under my hands, and how I could feel the quiet outline of her bones beneath it. I loved her even when I was scared of her, and I was scared of her a lot by the end. It felt like living under a constant gray sky, something heavy pressing down on me day after day, wearing me down, draining whatever was left of my will to live, like the walls were slowly closing in. Then there was Hale. Hale was 28, a graduate student of one of my colleagues, not a child, but young enough that I hated myself the first time I wanted her. She wasn't in my classes, thank God, but close enough to my world that it made everything worse. If Sila ever found out I was sleeping with a graduate student, it wouldn't just wreck my marriage. It could wreck my job, my name, my whole life. Hayel was nothing like Sila. Sila was all angles and stillness. Hayel was soft where Sila was hard. Honey-colored skin, thick blonde curls she kept tying up and letting down again, wide mouth, warm blue eyes, small golden earrings that hung like something old. She laughed with her whole face. When she listened, she leaned in, close, her breath brushing me, and there was something unusual in the way it smelled, something I couldn't explain, but it pulled me in. She was a cloud of warmth and sun. Sila made me feel examined. Hale made me feel wanted, desired. And yes, I wanted her. I wanted her badly. The first time she touched my wrist in a cafe and asked if I was okay, I felt that touch the rest of the day. It wasn't just sex, though God knows there was that too. It was the feeling of my body unclenching around her. With Hale, I could breathe. I could say stupid things. I could be tired. I could sit in silence and not feel judged. That's how it started. Then it turned into something real, a fucking affair. I always thought I wasn't that kind of asshole. Turns out I was. And the worst part is, she made me happy in a way I hadn't been in a long time. 3 months. 3 months of deleting messages in parking lots. 3 months of checking my collar and mirrors before I went home, erasing Kate Bush and the Weeknd songs from my playlist, little traces she left behind without even meaning to. 3 months of coming back to my own house with my pulse hammering, wondering if tonight was the night Sila would look at me and know. She almost caught me more than once. A blonde hair would have been too easy. Sila had dark curls like spilled ink. I got careful about everything, brushing off my clothes, checking myself before I walked back in the door. Instead, it was smaller things that almost gave it away. Orange hand cream on my skin. A motel receipt I forgot in the inside pocket of my coat. One night my phone lit up on the table and Sila glanced at it before I could turn it over. She didn't say anything for a full minute. Then she asked, "Do your students usually text you after midnight?" I said Hill wasn't my student. I don't know why I said that. Maybe because some part of me was already confessing. Sila just looked at me. "That wasn't my question," she said. "I was a shitty husband not just because I lied and dodged questions. The truth is, the marriage had gotten so heavy on me that I stopped really seeing what mattered, or I saw it and didn't act." A little before I met Hale, Sila had already started looking unwell. I asked once, maybe twice, if she was okay. She brushed it off, said she'd see one of the doctors they have at their facility, said it was nothing, just this new drug at work, long hours, pressure, everyone running on fumes. And I took that as permission to look away, to stay out later, to spend more nights with Hale. Even then, even with Hale, seeing Cycla like that got to me. That's the part people won't understand. I still wanted her. Not the way I wanted Hale, not anymore, but I'd look at my wife and still see the woman I had once wanted so badly it hurt. Hale finally tried to force me to choose. We were in the room she rented outside town. She'd told everyone she had a workshop, some excuse like that, sitting on the bed with takeout cartons between us. She looked tired, worn down in a quiet way, like someone who's been waiting too long for a man who keeps going home to someone else. "I can't keep being the place you hide," she said, and all I could think about was burying my face in her thick golden hair, disappearing there, like that old Guns N' Roses song. I lifted her, her pretty bare feet tucked under her, my sweatshirt hanging off of her naked shoulder, her face open, hurt, still gentle. "So?" I asked. "So either you leave," she said, "or you stop coming." I swallowed, feeling something in my chest tighten, and said, "I don't know how to do either." She looked at me for a moment, like she was about to say something, and then changed her mind and instead leaned in, a little uncertain, and kissed me softly, her hand resting on my arm as if she wasn't sure I'd still be there. That same night, Sila asked if I'd come with her to a cabin near a reservoir in the mountains. 2 nights, no work, no excuses, just us. It caught me off guard, of course, but I should have realized she knew more than she let on. The owner of the cabin told us not to go far out on the ice. "Looks solid till it doesn't," he said. The next morning, while Cycla was in the bathroom, Hale texted me, "If you mean it, I'll wait tonight." Cycla came out and saw my face. She didn't ask to see the phone. She didn't need to. "Who is she?" she asked. I lied. Badly. She stared at me for a long second, then said very quietly, "Don't do this to me." She put on her coat and walked out toward the reservoir. I followed her. The air burned my throat. The snow squeaked under my boots. She looked so thin in that dark coat. So beautiful. So breakable. She stopped near the shore and turned to me. "Who is she?" she asked. I couldn't answer. That was answer enough. She nodded once and turned away from me and kept walking, quickly. I saw the darker patch ahead. I knew what it meant. I remember that clearly. I knew. "Sila," I called. "Come back." I wasn't sure she heard me. She kept going. I pressed my lips tight. Then the ice cracked. The sound was sharp and wrong. She dropped hard, one leg through, then both, and suddenly she was in black water up to her chest, clawing at the edge. Her face when she looked back at me. Jesus. I dream that face every night. It is my eternal punishment. Part of it. I ran. I did run. But for some awful reason, it wasn't right away. There was 1 second, maybe less. One small, filthy second when I thought, if she dies, I won't have to choose. Then I moved. I got down on the ice, reached for her, felt it break under me too, felt cold water hit my hands like knives. She grabbed my wrist once. I can still feel her nails. Then I jerked back to keep from going in myself, and that tiny backward move was enough. By the time I lunged forward again, she was gone. Afterward, there were sirens, people, a blanket around my shoulders. Someone said her name. Someone said mine. I don't remember much else. I drove straight to Hale. I needed her. That's the ugliest truth after the ice. My wife had just died, and I still drove to the woman I was going to leave her for. Her door was unlocked. That felt wrong right away, but I still pushed it open. The room was too bare. No clothes, no books, no bag on the floor, not messy, emptied. I took a few steps in, and I saw it. Her sink, a badge. Familiar shape before the name even hit me. Sila's name. Under it, 3 small glass vials in a case, and beside them, a sheet of paper. It wasn't addressed to anyone, but I knew it was meant for me. I don't remember the note word for word. Everything started to blur, like I might pass out. But I remember what it meant. It was something she couldn't say to me, maybe something I was never meant to read at all. She'd used that experimental drug to change herself, to become softer, warmer, someone I could love. Hale was Sila. Sila was Hale. Was Hale. I think I lost it a little more then. You know that feeling when everything goes quiet and far away, like you've slipped just outside yourself and can't quite get back in. I remember gripping the sink, trying to steady myself, trying to make it make sense. I told myself Hale and Sila were the same woman, tried to hold that thought in place, but it wouldn't stay. It kept slipping, like my mind just wouldn't let those 2 women settle into the same person. At the end of the note, she wrote that she saw it clearly. I didn't love her. I loved the drug and what it turned her into, and that knowing it broke her, but she still couldn't stop. She was addicted to being the only version of herself I ever chose. I see it now. She was right. There's a hollow in me that even true love can't survive. Elena's ability to escort the souls of the recently dead to where they needed to go kicked in as she hit puberty, which, coincidentally or not, happened around the time her father died. Elena was actually with him when it happened. One minute, Dad was parking the car, then telling her to run ahead. He's feeling a bit off. He'll catch up in a second. The next, he tumbled out of the vehicle and spilled onto the pavement of a quiet suburban strip mall, clutching his heart. And then the next minute, Elena was holding his hand, walking with him in a wide gray wasteland, walking towards a still lake. They both stayed quiet. There didn't seem to be much to say. She watched him get into the boat and waved goodbye. He nervously twitched his arm in response. The ancients never lied, we just stopped listening. Elena returned home as the boat drifted out of sight. Dad's body was motionless on the pavement. They had just returned from a basketball game. Elena remembered how chilly the winds were against her bare legs. She saw Mom run out, her mouth twisted open. She could hear her crying out. Dad was just the first. Fortunately, Elena was only the psychopomp for those who died in her vicinity, but even so, she seemed to be quite busy. Grandmother, Dad's mother, didn't outlive her son for very long. Elena still remembers the walk towards the lake with her, holding her hand, which was now young, smooth-skinned, and strong, her eyes glowing with happiness in the gray light. Elena understood that grandmother was happy to see her son, and she wasn't confused and bewildered like poor Dad had been, but that made Elena feel sad too. It didn't feel right to be so happy to be dead, but who was she to say so? Grandmother almost ran to the boat, which was waiting for her, barely remembering to look back at Elena, who felt quite left out, standing on the shore by herself. After that, it was Alice. Elena had had a crush on Alice, like most of the other kids on the block. Alice had long golden red hair and very sparkly eyes, and she was very friendly too, not stuck up or too good to talk to her, like most popular and pretty girls were. They saw each other all the time, and Elena wasn't sure if they were friends or not, but she knew if someone asked Alice, she would say they were friends, but then Alice would say she was friends with everyone, and she'd be right. Anyway, it was a hit and run. She was lying all twisted up and bloody on the pavement right outside Elena's house, but it wasn't like when her dad had died. It was a million times worse. Elena held Alice's hand firmly because Alice wanted to get away. She wanted to walk away from the gray wasteland, right back into her home, but of course she couldn't. Then she realized she couldn't, and she opened her mouth and screamed, howled and screamed into the gray winds, her pretty face already crushed from the accident, distorting even more. And Elena held her hand and waited for the moment to pass, for Alice to get into the boat and leave. The moment passed, Alice stopped howling into the grayness, hugged Elena, and got into the boat. Her hair still looked golden red, even in the gray dimness, and Elena could see it for a very long time. After she stopped seeing it, she returned home, where there was no Alice to try and hang around. Years passed. Elena kept doing what she had to do. Friends, family, passers-by, neighbors. Prom night happened, and the inevitable car crash with the silly drunk kid at the wheel, wrapping the car around a telephone pole and getting himself and his 3 passengers all killed. The girls' beautiful, shiny dresses were all splattered with blood. They didn't all die at once. Elena took them across the gray wasteland, 2 by 2. Nicole, who was in Spanish and math with her in school, and the other guy who was new to town, she didn't know his name, holding their hands firmly. Then she came back for the other 2. Nicole called out for her mom as Elena walked away, and Elena thought she was probably confused by the crash, or maybe not. The other girl, Clara, lashed out at her prom date, the drunk driver shrieking at him for killing them and trying to scratch him up with her gorgeous, shiny, hard-lacquered nails. She had sparkling gemstones in her nails, and Elena thought it must have hurt when she dragged them across the drunk boy's face. But of course it didn't. He was quite dead by then, and Clara saw she couldn't hurt him and it was useless, so she stopped trying. Elena held her hand and felt the hard, scratchy, pointed nails dig into her palms, but they left no mark because Clara, by then, was quite dead too. The boat waited to take all 4 of them, Clara, Nicole, and their dates. Elena waved goodbye to them, but they didn't take any notice. One time, a few years later, she was in another neighborhood, not her own, and something went wrong. People were angry, upset, shouting. Elena was trying to get away and get home. She hadn't meant to be there. She couldn't leave her mom alone for long, but then police arrived. Elena was confused. There was a mass of people shoving and pushing. She was just trying to get out. Then there were shots. Someone fell. Blood people were screaming, and then she was walking in the familiar gray with a stranger, half their face blown off. She sighed. She didn't need to hold his hand too tightly, even though the stranger had small children and family and hadn't gone out expecting to die. The stranger was very kind to her, which was wrong, she knew, but it was what it was, and he even thanked Elena, which was completely unnecessary, because it wasn't like Elena had any choice in the matter. After he got into the boat, he waved and smiled at Elena, and Elena smiled back. Now Elena is old. She spends time in a nursing home, and of course she is as busy as ever. She hasn't become used to it. How could she be? But she does wonder, who will take her when her time, not too long now, comes? Who will hold her hand in the dim grayness and guide her towards the lake? She looks at her friends, their gentle, fallen, kind, confused faces, at the aides and nurses, so bright and bustling, so tired and annoyed, and wonders. She hopes it won't be Arkla, complaining Arkla, they call her, and it had better not be Eloisa who steals from them. Of that they are all sure. Also, she is not particularly gentle or kind. No, she would be a terrible psychopomp. Elena hopes she will have the pleasure of escorting Eloisa herself, although that is unlikely since she's only 22. Soon, Elena will find out. I get to work, and my coworker is already there waiting for me. We work the night shift at a hydroelectric dam. We're here to make sure everything runs smoothly throughout the night. Day crew didn't have any issues today. Should be an easy night, my coworker, Kink, says. Hell yeah, I reply. I sure hope so. These nights suck. I'm so tired all the time. I walk into our little kitchen and start putting my food in the fridge when I get a text. I pull my phone out. It's from Kink. What? Why would he text me when he's right here? I almost ask him, but I read the message, and it makes me freeze. Sorry, man, running late. I'll be there in 5 minutes. My mind starts racing, trying to come up with a logical explanation. Maybe when he sent the text, he had bad service, and it just now went through. That doesn't make sense. He got here before me. He got here early. I walk out of the kitchen and look around. I can't see him anywhere. Did I imagine him being here? Come to think of it, did I even see his truck in the parking lot? No, that's crazy. I talked to him. He told me about day shift. He's probably just messing with me. Maybe he's got some prank planned. I look over at the monitors that show the camera feeds. One of them shows the main gate. There's his truck, pulling up. Man, he's really committed to this prank. I start thinking of a way I can turn this around on him. Hey, Kink says, Jesus Christ. I yell, clutching my chest as my heart starts racing. My whole body tenses up. There's no way he could have gotten here that fast. I'm absolutely terrified. Whatever this is, it's gonna kill me. I just know it. All I can do is stand there and stare at him, too scared to move. Sorry, man. I didn't mean to scare you, he says. Hey, I'm gonna go walk around and check on the turbine gallery. If you need me, give me a call. With that, he turns around and leaves through the door that leads into the plant. I stand there, still in shock, wondering if I'm losing my mind, when the door on the other side of the room opens. Kink walks in from the parking lot, the same one that just left through the other door. I just stand there, not saying a word. Fear takes over again, locking up every muscle. I can't move, and for the second time tonight, I feel like I'm about to die. Hey man, sorry traffic was terrible today, he says as he walks in. I'll go ahead and do the first set of rounds. Then he walks through the same door as the other one. Am I actually going crazy? I know I haven't been sleeping well, but it's not that bad. My thoughts are interrupted by my phone buzzing. I'm getting a call. I quickly pull my phone out, half expecting it to be another Kink. I let out a sigh of relief. It's my boss. Hello, I say. Hey, I know you're probably wondering where Kink is. I'm just calling to let you know he was found dead in his apartment today. There's a long pause. I can't speak. If Kink is dead, who did I see? And who did I see twice? Were both of them fake? What the hell is going on? I know this must be tough. If you need anything or want to talk to someone, let us know and we can help, he continues. I won't bother you anymore. Have a great shift. The call ends. I stand there completely frozen. Am I losing my mind? I saw 2 versions of my now dead coworker. That's not normal. That's not possible. I scan the camera feeds, looking for any sign of one of the Kinks walking around. Nothing. All empty. I check the security badge monitor. It shows when people use their badges to open doors. I calm down a little. There's no record of anyone badging in. Maybe I am losing my mind. But honestly, that feels better than something pretending to be him. I decide to try and focus on work when something catches my eye. Kink's name pops up. Twice. It shows he badged in at both doors leading into this room at the exact same time. Those doors are on opposite sides of the room. Absolute dread fills my body as I hear both doors open at the same time. The monuments of life have crept long enough on my back. I've moved mountains across time, built everything by my own hand, created life that no longer believes in me. All those smiles, all those tears, every moment shared would be nothing without me. Now the world I built begins to cave. The stars are gone, nothing left to guide them through the dark. They'll drift into the black void. Without me, there is no light. No fire to control, no protection from what waits in the abyss. I need sleep. I can't hear them anymore. I can't see them anymore. What happens to a god who can no longer sleep? The official designation is Anomaly 814 Delta, but the lab techs just call it the broadcaster. To the untrained eye, it's nothing more than a heavy olive green Soviet ham radio from the late 1970s. It's covered in Cyrillic dials, rust, and dust. When it was brought into my containment sector at Site 9, my job was to catalog its anomalous properties. I noted immediately that the front panel was solid steel. There was no grill, no speaker cone, and no headphone jack. "How does it output sound?" I asked Dr. Sira, looking through the reinforced glass of the testing chamber. Inside the chamber sat Subject D42, a convicted arsonist wearing a gray jumpsuit. He was strapped to a chair directly in front of the radio. "Observe," Sira said, and pressed the intercom button. "Subject D42, please turn the primary dial to frequency 104.24. D42 grunted, leaning forward. His handcuffed fingers reached out and clicked the heavy metal dial to the right. The radio hummed. A green light flickered on the chassis. Then D42 screamed. The scream didn't last long, because his jaw violently and instantly dislocated. There was a sickening crack pop that echoed through the observation glass as his temporomandibular joints snapped out of their sockets. His lower jaw dropped impossibly low, tearing the skin at the corners of his mouth, the bone resting almost flush against his collarbone. His eyes rolled back in agonizing shock. He looked like a snake unhinging its jaw to swallow an egg. Then the audio started. It didn't come from the radio. It came from deep inside D42's open throat, a booming, deafening broadcast of a 1940s jazz song. Chattanooga Choo Choo blasted out of his mouth at roughly 110 decibels. The volume was so intense that the acoustic vibrations weaponized his teeth. His upper and lower rows of teeth began to vibrate and blur, acting like the physical cones of a subwoofer. The enamel shattered and chipped, spraying a fine mist of white dust and blood out of his open mouth with every heavy bass note. His skull was acting as the resonance chamber, amplifying the brass section until D42's nose began to violently hemorrhage. Dr. Sira calmly wrote something down on her clipboard. The artifact requires a biological acoustic projector. It hijacks the calcium in the nearest skull. "Turn it off," I yelled over the deafening, bloody jazz music. "I can't," Sira replied, her eyes glued to D42. "The song isn't over yet. If we turn the dial mid-broadcast, it tries to find a new speaker." Sira slowly turned her head to look at me. "And you and I are the only other ones in the room." I gripped Maya's hand while our gracious hostess went to get her little farewell gift for us. The visit with Nala had gone well, but I desperately wanted to get out of there and be on our way to the harbor. Maya smiled nervously at me. I knew she was thinking the same. Meeting your ex in the aftermath of a breakup is never easy, especially with your new girlfriend at your side. But Nala had been so sweetly persistent about having Maya and me visit her, and she had taken our breakup so well, much better than I had thought, and there was no doubt I felt guilty about it. I had fallen in love with Maya the moment I laid my eyes on her, and I knew the right thing to do was to break up with Nala so I could be with the love of my life, but still, it had been rough, and I felt grateful to Nala for behaving much better than I would have thought possible. Nala came back into the living room, holding something sparkly in her hands. "This is for you two. Oh goodness, you make a lovely couple." "Honestly, Liam," she looked at me intensely, her dark eyes glowing with sincerity. "Believe me when I say I am happy for you." I mumbled something, cringing so badly inside, I felt my teeth would shatter, and clumsily took the gift, a crystal vase. Nala was still talking. "I just thought of you. The moment I picked this up, I knew I had to give it to you. I appreciate it so much that you made time to visit." Maya stood up. "Thank you, Nala. The vase is lovely. We must be on our way. Oh, of course. You have a boat to catch. Off you go, lovebirds." Nala giggled, and Maya and I squirmed. In the car, we didn't say much. Nala has a rather overpowering presence, and it is possible I had downplayed her vitality and force to Maya. It was Maya who broke our silence as we approached the coast. It was a nice gesture, and I understand it makes sense she would want to meet me and get closure. I parked, turned to Maya, and cupped her lovely face. Listen to me. No more talk of Nala, okay? That part of my life is over, done, and dusted. It's you and me. No Nala. Get it? Maya nodded, smiling. We shared a deep kiss, a promise of delights to come, and headed toward the ferry terminal. Every mile between us and Nala made my heart feel lighter, and knowing that soon we would be hundreds of miles away brought a sense of joy that I had not felt for a very, very long time. Which was odd, given how perfectly and blamelessly Nala had always behaved towards me. Everything went without a hitch at the terminal. Before we knew it, we were out on the open sea. I hadn't been on a ferry for a while, and I was excited, and yet also scared. I had never been scared of the ocean before. I just put it down to nerves, as our departure had been exceptionally smooth. The boat was cruising steadily across the calm waves with only the vast blue horizon around us, and we were messing about with our phones, teasing each other in that silly way lovers do, when the first jolt happened. At the same time, the captain mumbled over the crackly loudspeaker to return to our seats and fasten our seatbelts. We held hands and smiled at each other. I knew, of course, that heavy swells are just the boat hitting little potholes in the water, nothing to be worried about. So when the next sharp jolt threw me against the sides of my seat, I continued smiling, although my muscles were stiffening with dread. The shaking sharpened. Silence descended over the passengers. It felt as if the boat were being hammered. Children started crying, and then the vessel seemed to drop into a deep trough. A collective shriek went up as the loudspeaker cackled incomprehensibly. I gripped Maya's hand so hard that later she discovered 3 fractures in her finger bones. She cried out in agony and fear. The boat shuddered again, and a terrible whirring noise filled the darkened cabin. I saw Nala's glowing dark eyes, her deep smile, a little farewell gift. Heard the clacking of her heels as she walked towards me, something sparkling in her hands. You 2 lovebirds have a boat to catch. The vessel swooped and seemed to fall again, and everyone shrieked. I bent frantically, grappling at my hand luggage, which I had stored beneath the chair in front of me. I scrabbled in my bag and found it where I had shoved it down, the crystal vase. It glittered harshly in the flickering darkness, and something smoky seemed to move inside it. Without thinking why, I smashed it against the metal railing. Pain shot through my hand. Maya was crying now, hiccuping with fear and sobs. The vase was undamaged. My hand bleeding profusely, I put it on the floor and with all my strength stamped on it. I heard or felt the crack. I removed my foot. For a terrible moment, I thought the vase was still whole, but it slowly fell apart in 3 jagged pieces. I glimpsed a smokiness linger and then dissipate. Blood from my hand dripped on the glittering pieces. The juddering of the boat stopped. Normal lights flicked back on. The sound of crying lowered into whimpers, but the dreadful screams of primal fear died down. The loudspeakers crackled back into life. Ladies and gentlemen, this is your captain speaking. Apologies. The heavy swells have passed. Maya looked at the broken vase and back at me, her eyes still stretched wide, but now full of questions. I raised my foot again and brought it down on the crystal shards, slowly but firmly grinding them into smaller pieces. She bought a pair of slippers that made a unique squeaking sound when she walked, just like the footsteps in a cartoon. She loved them. That evening, when she went to bed, she lined them up neatly, side by side, with the heels facing the bed, so she could easily slip into them first thing in the morning. However, when she woke up the next day, she noticed the slippers had moved. The toes were now facing the bed. She brushed it off, thinking she must have forgotten to straighten them after a late-night trip to the hallway. On the second night, she lined them up again, perfectly parallel, heels toward the bed. When she woke up once more, the position had changed again. The toes were facing the bed, almost as if someone had secretly put them on, walked around the cabin, and returned to stand right by her bedside. By the third night, she was deeply unsettled by the strangeness of it all. She couldn't help but wonder, if that person or that thing realized she wasn't actually asleep, what would it do? In the early hours of the morning, she woke up for no apparent reason. Her eyes instinctively darted to the side of the bed. The slippers were gone. Immediately after, a series of footsteps echoed from outside the guest room. Squeak, 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 she gasped, her breath catching in her throat. Suddenly, the footsteps approached the guest room, the pace quickening. Squeak, 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 squeak. Everyone's always looking for that perfect place. Big enough, not too expensive, close to work. Somehow, I actually found it. The building itself was old, the kind with narrow hallways and a slow elevator that always made a faint noise on the way up, but it was well kept, clean, and quiet in a way that's hard to find in a city like this. The landlady lived in the same building, 3 floors above me. She was a tall, older woman with a soft voice and tight shoulders, and she seemed genuinely pleased to show me the apartment. It had 2 bedrooms, a big living room, and 1 balcony. It was also just a few blocks from the office, which meant I could walk to work every morning instead of dealing with packed trains. I walked through each room expecting there to be a catch. I had just graduated and still had student loans to deal with, so there was no way I should have been able to afford something like that. But when she told me the rent, I just stood there for a second. She explained she gives a big discount to young women who are new to the city because she had been one herself once, and I didn't question it. I signed the lease that same day. Moving in felt good. My dad helped me bring my stuff over and fix a few small things, and for the first time, it felt like I was actually starting my life. The only strange thing that first night was when I dropped a toolbox on my foot and cut the side of my big toe pretty badly. I cleaned it, put a bandage on it, and figured I'd take a better look the next day. But when I woke up, the cut was already gone, like it had happened a long time ago. The first month felt perfect. I used to sit on the balcony every morning, eating scrambled eggs and drinking coffee before walking to work. I was in my early 20s, living in the biggest city I'd ever been in, with a job I actually liked, and it felt like everything had finally worked out. The apartment was a big part of that. The first time something felt off was after a night out drinking with coworkers. I got home, opened Instagram, and saw a picture of myself from earlier that night, and I looked different. Nothing obvious, just older. My face looked a little more tired, my skin dull, with faint dark circles under my eyes. I even pulled up older photos to compare. Same angle, same smile, but it didn't look like the same person. I didn't think much of it at first, but over the next week, it got harder to ignore. My skin got drier, I started waking up exhausted no matter how much I slept, and one morning at work, I couldn't stop yawning during a meeting. Later that day, during a presentation, I felt a weird pain in my back. At first, I thought it was just stress. My first real job, a new city, a new routine. It made sense. I went to a doctor just to be safe, and he confirmed it was probably fatigue. So I kept going. Day after day, I started getting used to feeling like that. I went out less, stopped going to the gym, and most nights I just stayed in watching random shows. Every month, I'd slide the rent under the landlady's door, as we agreed. I almost never saw her after the first week, and she never reached out. About 2 months after moving in, I found my first gray hair. It was a Sunday morning, and I was brushing my hair while listening to a podcast when I saw it. It honestly freaked me out. After that, things got worse fast. My coworkers started noticing, my face looked thinner, my skin dry and lifeless, and I must have lost over 20 pounds without even trying. The gray hairs kept multiplying. My boss even called me into his office and asked if everything was okay, or if I needed some time off. I didn't even know what to tell him. Every doctor I had seen kept saying the same thing: stress, burnout, something like that. But the truth was, I wasn't even working that hard. Then Thanksgiving came up, and I decided to visit my parents in Portland because I couldn't wait to get out of that city. I kept thinking maybe I just needed that break. And for one day, I believed that was it. The first night back in my old room, my skin already looked better. I had energy again, and I felt like myself. But my parents didn't see it that way. They looked at me like they were seeing a different person, like they didn't recognize me anymore. And the worst part came when I stood next to my mom in the bathroom mirror. We looked the same age. That's when I knew it wasn't just stress. I ended up staying there for 2 weeks, and when I went back to the apartment, I already knew something in that place had changed me for good. The second I walked in, I started packing. I grabbed everything I could, threw it into 2 suitcases, and rushed to the elevator. There was another woman inside. A woman tall, athletic, wearing workout clothes and sunglasses, even indoors. She looked like she was in her early 20s. I barely paid attention to her at first. Then I looked again. Something about her felt familiar. The way she walked, the way she kept her shoulders tight, the shape of her face. I kept staring, trying to place it, and then it hit me. She looked exactly like the landlady, only decades younger. I stared at her longer than I should have, and she noticed. She turned away quickly and tried to step out as soon as the elevator reached the ground floor. But I didn't let her. I grabbed her arm and turned her toward me. I didn't let her toward me. I already knew. It was the landlady. I started yelling at her, asking what she'd done to me. She tried to pull away, but I wouldn't let go, and we ended up fighting right there in the lobby. Of course, she was now stronger than me, much stronger, and she shoved me hard enough that I fell and hit the back of my head on the floor. I don't remember losing consciousness. It just felt like everything cut out. When I woke up, I was in a hospital room in Seattle, with bright lights and nurses moving around outside, and the landlady sitting next to my bed. She looked guilty, almost sad. She apologized for pushing me and said she didn't have a choice, but I didn't care about that. I just wanted answers. Through tears, she told me the same thing had happened to her, that she had moved into that apartment about a year ago, and that there had been another landlady before her. I processed that information for a minute, then asked how the hell that worked, and she said she didn't know exactly. What the last landlady told her was only that the 2 apartments, hers and the one she rented out, had been connected since the building was constructed, and that one drains time while the other gives it, like a straw. I know how insane that sounds, because my first instinct was to call it a lie, but she stood up, wiped her eyes, and put a key in my hand, telling me that both apartments were mine now and that she was moving out. I asked her what I was supposed to do with it. She gave me a small, tired smile and told me to rent it out. I thought about going to the police. I thought about trying to find the landlady. I thought about going back to my parents, but none of that would give me those months back, or the years. I am 22, but my body is decades older, and every time I look in the mirror, I can tell it won't just reverse on its own. In desperation, I listed my apartment on the same website where I found it and moved into hers. The messages started coming in almost immediately. The first showing is today. That's why I'm writing this, out of guilt. One part of me keeps saying I don't have to do this, that there has to be another way. But the other part screams that I don't have a choice, that it's either this or accepting that I've lost all my youth. The girl coming to see the place sounded young and hopeful on the phone. She's excited to find a spot where she can have the best time of her life in this city. I remember sounding just like that. I moved into this apartment 3 months ago. It's a charming, old studio in the outskirts of Avenel, creaky floors, high ceilings, and a price that felt like a steal. The only thing that bothered me was a single floorboard right next to my nightstand that groaned every time I shifted my weight in bed. Last night, while I was reaching for a dropped coin, I noticed the board wasn't actually nailed down. When I pried it up, I didn't find dust or old pipes. I found a small, black leather-bound journal held shut by a frayed elastic band. At first, I felt a pang of guilt. I thought it was just the private diary of the previous tenant. But curiosity is a persistent beast. I sat on the edge of my bed and opened to the first page, dated exactly 2 years ago. "He's still here," it began. "I can hear him breathing the second I kill the lights." My stomach did a slow somersault. As I flipped through the pages, the entries described a slow descent into absolute paranoia. She wrote about feeling watched while she showered. She found her furniture moved by just an inch or two. The most chilling part was when she mentioned her toothbrush. It was damp in the morning, even though she hadn't brushed since the night before. She called the police multiple times, but they found nothing. No forced entry, no broken locks, no fingerprints. Toward the end, the handwriting became jagged, frantic, and almost unreadable. "He doesn't come from outside," she wrote in an entry from 4 months ago. "He's already here. He knows my schedule. He waits for my eyes to close before he crawls out of his hole." I tried to laugh it off. A poor, delusional woman, I told myself. But the very last page, dated just days before I signed my lease, stopped my heart. It was a single sentence written in trembling, oversized capital letters. "He's bored of me. He says the next one should have longer hair. He says he prefers blondes." I'm a blonde. My hair reaches the small of my back. I dropped the book, my hands shaking so violently I had to grip the mattress to stay upright. That's when I noticed a detail I had overlooked for months. Tucked partially under the wooden frame of my bed is a small maintenance hatch for the crawl space. It's supposed to be sealed shut with layers of old white paint, but the paint around the screws was chipped, freshly chipped. Small white flakes were scattered on the rug right beneath my head. I lunged for my phone on the nightstand to call for help, but the screen stayed black. I'd had it plugged in all night. When I pulled the charging cable out and looked into the port, I saw it was jammed with something small and white. I picked it out with a shaking fingernail. It was a tiny wad of chewed-up paper. I unrolled it to find a crude, hand-drawn face with a wide, toothy grin and a single word written in dark ink: "Hush." The realization hit me like a physical blow. The creaking floorboard I heard every night? It wasn't because of my weight. It was because someone was stepping on it from underneath as they climbed out. I'm sitting on my bed now, typing this on my laptop with the last 10% of my battery. I can't run to the door. I'd have to pass the bed hatch to get there. And as I stare down at the gap between the hatch and the floor, I can see it. A human eye, bloodshot and wide, is staring back at me through the darkness. It hasn't blinked in 3 minutes. And I just heard the wood of the hatch creak upward.